Okay, today we're going to be working through the Unit 4 test review for graphing linear equations. At the top of the review, I left you guys with all of the different types of forms, or actually just two of the different forms that we use. It's missing standard form, but these are the ones that are most useful when we want to go and graph equations. So slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Remember, in slope-intercept form, the M stands for how the line moves. So the slope is M, and that's how the line moves. And the y-intercept form, or the y-intercept, is B, and that's where the line begins. Okay, so those are the things you can find on slope-intercept form. And on point-slope form, once again, we still have the slope is M, or how the line moves. That's right there before the parentheses. And then we have the point, which is x1 and y1. And remember that it's opposite day when you write that ordered pair. So that's what this is saying. So it says minus x1, so that would be a positive, and then minus y1, so that would be a positive. So let's go ahead and work through the review. This one says in the equation y equals 6x minus 8, what is the y-intercept? So remember, B is the one that, if it says y equals, B is your y-intercept. So negative 8 is going to be your y-intercept. So y-intercept is negative 8. Okay. On number 2, it says what is the slope? Well, in order to find the slope, we have to make sure it says y equals. So this does not, so we need to solve it for y. So to do that, we cover up the y and realize we need to move that 3x. So we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. And so this cancels. We get y equals negative 3x plus 2. Remember, we can't combine like terms because this one has x and this one does not. So now we're just looking for the slope, and remember the slope is that number before x, so we're going to say the slope is negative 3. So on number 2, you remember you have to solve for y first. Number 3, it says what is the equation of the line where the slope is tripled, but the y-intercept remains the same. So remember, we're using y equals mx plus b. So let's write the current line. So the current line is going to be y equals, and let's find the current slope. So if I draw my triangle, it's 2 high and it's 5 wide, right? 5 and 2, okay? And so it's going, if I had slope dude, I'd say he's going down the hill, so it's negative 5 over 2. And the y-intercept is where it touches the y-axis at 4. So our equation is negative 5 over 2x plus 4. Okay? Now it says if I triple the slope, so I'm going to triple the slope, so I'm going to come to my calculator, and I'm going to say negative 5 over 2 times tripled means times 3. So over here, we're going to clear out everything. Alpha y equals enter, so we can get our fraction, and say negative 5 over 2, all of that times 3, and that gets me, I don't know if you can see it, negative 15 over 2. So my new equation is y equals negative 15 over 2x, and it says the y-intercept stays the same, or stays constant, so that means we say plus 4. So to triple the slope, we're going to do, this is our new line. So we're going to triple the slope by multiplying this by 3. And remember, you can use alpha y equals enter to do that. Sorry, I had some stuff on my desk. Okay. Number 4. The graph of the line is negative 8x plus 12. What is the new equation if the slope is cut in half? So we need to find the slope first. So what is the slope of this equation? Negative 8. Okay. So the current slope is negative 8. And if I want to cut it in half, the new slope is going to be negative 8 divided by 2, which is negative 4. So it says, what is the new equation? So the new equation is y equals, instead of the negative 8, I'm going to put negative 4, x plus 12. Everything else stays exactly the same. Okay. Number 3, the x and y intercepts from the table. So So remember, the x-intercept, that's when y equals 0. The y-intercept is when x equals 0. So I'm going to make my y-intercept green, find when x equals 0, and highlight it. Make my x-intercept yellow, find when y is 0, and highlight it. So the x-intercept is going to be -6, 0, and the y-intercept is going to be 0, -4. Okay. Alright, number 6. The cost to repair a car is shown in the graph. What is the slope of the graph? Guys, on these graphs that they're asking us to find the slope of, we need to be very, very careful about how they number the x and y axis. So on the x-axis it's counting by ones, but on the y-axis, notice how each of those marks is counting by 50. Okay? So if I'm going to find the slope, and I draw my slope triangle, it goes to the right 1, but how much is it going up and down? Well, instead of 1, it's actually going up 50. Okay? So the slope is 50 over 1. Remember, it's rise over run. So it's 50 over 1, which we can just say is 50. And the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So right here is where it crosses the y-axis. So our y-intercept is, now 50 is the y, so we're going to put it in the y spot. And we're going to put a 0 in the x spot. So the y-intercept is 0, 50. Okay? That's where it touches the y-axis. Okay? Alright, second page. One page down, 3 more to go. It says, what happens to the graph of y equals 8x compared to the linear parent function? Now the linear parent function is y equals x. So how does it change? So we're going to take our two graphs and we're going to look at them on our calculator. So you go to y equals and you clear it out. You're going to put the parent function in, and then you're going to put 8x in. So I've put both of my graphs. Remember, x is over here by the green button if you're trying to find x. Okay, so we're going to put both of our graphs and we're going to push graph. Now the first one that it graphs, that's y equals x. The second one that it graphs, that's y equals 8x. So how did the graph change? Did it shift? No, it got steeper. So C is my answer. Okay. Alright, what happens to the graph of x minus 6 compared to the linear parent function? Remember, that's y equals x. So we're going to go to our graph, our calculator, keep y equals x, but we're going to clear out this second equation. Okay? And we're going to say x minus 6 instead. So x minus 6, and we're going to push graph. Remember, the first one is y equals x, and the second one is y equals x minus 6. You notice the graphs are parallel, so it didn't get steeper, it just moved down. So we're going to say B, shift down. So on these problems, make sure you use your calculator. Okay, number 10, it says the graph shows the amount owed over life of a laptop of a loan. What is the x-intercept and what is the slope? Remember, x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. So where does it cross the x-axis? At 10. So remember, 10 goes in the x spot and 0 goes in the y spot. Now we need to find the slope. So you could find the slope by doing the first point and the last point. I would prefer to do closer together points. So I'm going to use the first point and the second point. Once again, it looks like it's 1 and 1, but we have to be very careful about what it says on the x-axis and on the y-axis. So it's 1 across here, and it's 100 across up here. So my slope is 100 over 1, which is really just 100. Okay? Alright. On numbers 11 through 14, they're asking us to isolate y and then find m and b. So remember, on number 11, we're going to distribute first. So we're going to say a half times x and a half times 4. So y plus 3 equals 1/2 x plus, and half of 4 is 2. The last step on these problems is to go ahead and get the y all alone by subtracting 3. So y equals 1/2 x minus 1. Remember, m is going to be the number next to x, and b is going to be the number we add or subtract at the end. So b is -1, and m is 1/2. Okay? Alright, this is called point slope form. I'm going to do number 14 next, just so that we can do the two problems that match up same steps. So the first thing you do is you distribute. -2x minus 2 equals y minus 5. And then you're going to go ahead to get the y all alone. We've got to add that 5 to both sides. So y equals -2x plus 3. Remember, the b is the number that you add at the end, and the m is the number next to x. So -2 and 3. Okay? Okay, on number 12, remember the rule is add or subtract the x term and divide by the coefficient of y. So if we want to get y all alone, that means we need to cover up the 8x and realize that we've got to move that 4x to the other side. And because it's negative, we're going to add 4x to both sides. So we're going to add 4x. So this is 8y equals -24 plus 4x. And then remember, we have to share the love. So we're going to divide by 8 on every part of this equation. We're going to share the love between all of them. So this is y equals -24 divided by 8 is -3. And 4 divided by 8 is 1/2. So we put that before the x. Then remember, b is the number that you add or subtract. And m is the number before x. So m is 1/2. And b is -3. We're going to do the same thing on number 13. Number 13 says that we want to get the y all alone, so we're going to cover it up. We need to add the 2x to both sides. So this is 4y equals 12 plus 2x. And then we're going to share the love. So that means we're going to divide by 4 on each part of this equation. When you divide by 4, you get y equals, and then this is going to be 3, and this will be 1/2 x. Remember, the slope is the number next to x, and b is the number that we add or subtract. So this is 1/2 and 3. Okay. All right, next section. 2 pages down. 2 pages to go. Here we go. How do I graph y equals -2x minus 4? Well, we graph m and we graph b. What is b? Remember, b is the number that we add or subtract. M is the number that we have before x. So this is going to be -2. Remember, if your m is a whole number, you're going to want to put it over 1. b is -4. That means I begin at -4 on the y-axis, and I put a dot. And then this means -2 over 1. So down 2 over 1 to the right 1. So we go down 2, right 1. I can only put 1 point, so I'm going to go the other way by going up 2, back 1. Up 2 to the left, up 2 to the left, up 2 to the left, up 2 to the left. Okay? Please don't just copy mine. Please make sure that you have actually attempted to graph this. It doesn't make any sense for you to just copy the points that I graphed here. You got to know how to do it. Okay? Are there any other ones in slope-intercept form? Yes, number 17. Number 17, what is m? It's 1/2. What is b? It's 2. Remember, b is the number that you add or subtract. M is the number that's before the x. Okay? So we begin at 2, and we're going to go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. And to get the points to the other side, we're going to go down 1 and to the left 2, down 1 to the left 2. 1 over 2, that's what that means. I always say that word over, and that helps me remember that this is the left or right number, that 2 right there. Okay, now we're talking about number 16. It says, This one is point slope form. So my slope is going to be that number before the parentheses. Okay, it's still the number beside the x. But the point is going to be this 1 and this 4. Remember, the x is by the x and the y is by the y. Okay, so x1 is going to be 1, y1 is going to be 4. And also remember that it's opposite day. So the x is by the x and the y is by the y. So my ordered pair is 1, 4. And now I'm going to graph it. So that means I'm going to start at 1, 4. And I'm going to move, remember if it's a whole number we need to put it over 1. So I'm going to move 2 over 1. So that means to go up 2 and to the right 1. And down 2 and to the left 1. So you're going to graph your starting point. This is your starting point. Because of this point. Okay? And then you're going to just go ahead and graph. Okay? So instead of starting on the y-axis this time, we're starting at this point. Okay? 1, 4. Alright, number 18, same type of problem. Remember, you can pause the video if you need to. M is 1/2, and my point, remember, is going to be its opposite day. So x1 is positive 5, so that means x1 is going to be negative 5. y1 is negative 3, so that means it's going to be positive 3. So this is negative 5, 3. So I'm going to start at negative 5, 3. Negative 5, 3. That's where I start. That's where we start. And how are we going to move? 1 over 2. So that means go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. Okay, and so that's what my graph looks like. Okay. Alright, number 19 says to graph using the intercepts. So to graph using the intercepts, what you're going to do is you're going to find your x-intercept. Remember, your x-intercept is when y is 0. So I'm going to do 2x plus 3 times 0 equals 12. And I'm going to solve it. Remember, that means 2x equals 12 because 3 times 0 is just 0. So that means that your x equals 6. Remember, that means my ordered pair has a 6 in the x spot and a 0 in the y spot. I'm going to go to the x-axis and I'm going to put a dot at 6. Now let's talk about the y-intercept. The y-intercept is when x is 0. So that means I'm going to put a 0 instead of x. So 2 times 0 plus 3y equals 12. That cancels and it's just 3y equals 12. Divide by 3, so y equals 4. Now remember, I put a 0 in the x spot and a 4 in the y spot because I'm talking about the y-intercept. Now I'm going to put a dot at 4. And then this just makes it super easy. You can just graph it, just like so. Okay? The whole point of the intercepts is to give you 2 points so you can just draw a line through it. If you can't remember to do that on your test tomorrow, that's totally fine. Go ahead and just solve this for y and graph it that way. Alright, number 20, it says find the slope, y-intercept, and write the equation. Alright, so remember y-intercept is when x is 0. So where's the y-intercept? Right here. Okay, so the y-intercept is negative 16. And then it says find the slope. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. So we've got to find how much does the y change. It goes down 3. How much does the x change? Goes up 1. So change in y is negative 3. Change in x is 1. So my slope is negative 3. And then remember, it's y equals mx plus b. So that means m is negative 3, so y equals negative 3x, and b is negative 16, so I say minus 16. Okay? Remember, y-intercept, that's what goes at the end, and slope, that's the number that goes before the x. Okay. Alright, last page. Woohoo! Here we go. So, how would the graph of the function be affected if its slope is changed to 2 and the y-intercept remains the same? That's number 21. So what we have to do is the same thing that we were doing before. We're going to change the slope to 2. So that means y equals, instead of negative 2, we're going to change it to positive 2. and the y-intercept stays the same, so I still write plus 4. Now I graph both of those equations on my calculator. So this is negative 2x plus 4, and the second one is just 2x plus 4. And we push graph. Remember, that's my first equation, and that's my second equation. So it says the x-intercept remains the same. Is that true? See, these sentences here that are long, I like to just do them one part at a time. So I'm just going to look at this x-intercept part of the sentence. Does the x-intercept remain the same? No, it definitely changes. So I'm going to cross out the part that says remains the same, because I know that that's not true because of that part. Now, did the x-intercept become positive? Yes. Number C, did the x-intercept become negative? No, it became positive. And D says x-intercept remains the same. So I can be completely done with the problem if I just look at that first part of the sentence. So B is my answer. Make sure the second half of the sentence is true, though. Does the new line intersect the original line? Yes. All right. Number 22. A student graphed f of x equals x, and then they graphed g of x equals f of x minus 3. So this whole thing really means that they're saying they took this equation and then they subtracted 3. So really this just means x minus 3. Which statement describes how they are related? So go to y equals and change this to say f of x equals x and f of x equals x minus 3. Then you push graph and you take a look at it. So the first one says the graph of f is shifted 3 units up to create g. So the top one is f and the bottom one is g. Did f get shifted up to make g? No. F got shifted down. So I'm going to cross off the part of the sentence that is wrong. Okay? The graph of f is steeper. Are these two graphs the same steepness? Yes. So it's not steeper. So I'm going to cross that off. Did f get shifted 3 units down to create g? Yes. So C is my answer. Because D is also talking about steepness. So on your calculator, you're going to type it into y equals, and you're just going to look at the graphs. I like these problems. They're easy. You just read the answers. 23. The linear function f of x equals f is a graph on a coordinate plane. The graph of the new line is formed by changing the slope to 3 and the y-intercept to 4. So we're going to change the slope to 3. So this is y equals 3x plus the y-intercept now is 4. So now we have f of x equals x, and we got to change our second equation. So we go change our second equation on the calculator, 3x plus 4. And we're going to push graph. So there's the first equation. There's the second equation. So now we're going to read our answer choices, and remember, cross out the parts of the sentences that are not correct. And I'm just going to start with the first part because it's talking about steepness. So did my line get less steep or did it get steeper? My line got steeper. See, it would be harder to walk up this line. So we need to cross off the part that says less steep. The graph of the new line is not less steep. The graph of the new line is steeper. So that means B and D are gone. Now let's look at A. A says the y-intercept has been translated down. So here's my original graph. Here's my new graph. Did my y-intercept go up or did it go down? My y-intercept went up. So that's not correct. It was not translated down. It was actually translated up. And this answer choice also says the y-intercept has been I crossed that off. The y-intercept has been translated up. So C is the correct answer. Okay? All right, 24. The graph shows the altitude of a hot air balloon on the ground. What is the x-intercept and what is the slope? So once again, we need to pay attention to the axes. Okay, so here we've got the x-intercept. That's easy. That's just where it crosses the x-axis. The x-intercept is 0, 0. What is the slope? So we need to find 2 points, 2 pretty points on the graph. Now, I am lazy. Personally, I don't want to count what they're counting by here. I think they're counting by 100. Let's see. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. So they're counting by 100. But I had to kind of guess that before I did anything. Whereas if I picked this point right here, it tells me that it's exactly 1,000. So I like that. So from here to here is exactly 1,000. I kind of like using that as my reference. So I know on my triangle, it's 1,000 high. and it's how much across? 5. You can tell because right here it says 5. Okay? Now, you could have picked two closer together points and known that it counted by 100 and it would have been totally fine. But I personally, I don't like to try to figure it out. I would just rather use the numbers on the side of the graph. So my slope is going to be change in y over change in x. So that's going to be 1,000 over 5. It rises 1,000 and it goes across 5. When I simplify that, I get 200. So my slope is 200. Okay. That is the review for the Unit 4 test. Hope you enjoyed the boring dullness of my voice going through the entire review. But I hope you learned something. If you needed something out here, I hope you got what you needed. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to come into tutorials. Thank you so much. Have a good day.